Obstreperous. It's a word you don't hear often anymore. It means noisy and difficult to control. And it's certainly behavior that women are guarded against. But it's exactly what my 5th grade teacher thought of me. The thing is, I wasn't a bad kid. I actually really liked school. Oh, but I always got in trouble for being too much. I hated parent-teacher conferences because I knew, yet again, my parents would be coming back to tell me all the behavior I would need to change. And the feedback from teachers was interesting, like my 3rd grade teacher, who told my parents, direct quote, "Your daughter is a pest. She keeps asking for more work to do." And to my 5th grade teacher, I was obstreperous. Let's just say my energy and enthusiasm for school were not appreciated by my 5th grade teacher, and she demonstrated that lack of appreciation with the ultimate flex of elementary school authority. She put my name on the board. I still remember when it happened. We were studying homophones that week. You know, 2 words that sound the same but are different. And the words were weather, sun and rain, or whether or not I want more chocolate. We get to Friday's spelling test, and my teacher just said, weather. For the life of me, I could not remember which one she wanted. So I raised my hand and asked. She turned around and snarled at me, "You know perfectly well," and wrote my name on the board. The class looked at me in shock. Because my name went on the board, our points got cut in half, and the year-end party got cut in half. And it was so confusing, because 4th grade, totally different. My 4th grade teacher loved me. She loved my curiosity. To her, I was a star student. Yet 1 year later, I was too much. Same behavior, different person in charge, completely different assessment. And that is what it's like to be a woman in the workplace. Women are bombarded with feedback about how to conform to someone else's standard, and it's on behavior that gets men rewarded. You're too ambitious. You're too assertive. You're too inquisitive. And when we get that feedback, it makes us self-censor, miss opportunities, burn out. It even limits our salary growth. I saw this time and time again working for the largest corporations in the world. Women would receive conflicting feedback. Be confident, but not cocky. Be direct, but don't be bitchy. Be smart, but not a know-it-all. And it didn't matter what you did, you were going to get labeled as something. A 2024 study found it will take 22 years to reach gender equality for white women in corporate America, and more than double that for women of color. To survive, women learn to shrink themselves, play nice, be quiet, in order to fit into a system that was never designed with them in mind. But that's why I'm here today, to give you permission. Permission to be bold, permission to disrupt, permission to be obstreperous. Because now, more than ever, we've got to change the environment into something that works for us. I thought being labeled outspoken growing up was a bad thing. Turns out it's a badge of honor. Have you heard the quote, "Well-behaved women seldom make history"? That was historian Laurel Thatcher Ulrich, writing of the Puritan women who quietly conformed and disappeared from the record. That quote is a warning, not a celebration. And for the women who have made history, whether it's Malala in the Afghani schools or Rosa Parks on the Alabama buses, they did it by being disruptive. That unapologetic, unignorable, unruly behavior, it may be the key to unleashing your innate power. So speaking of power, Do you guys know where the current corporate power structure comes from? Early 19th century railroads. Because they had thousands of workers over thousands of miles, the hierarchical structure was created to facilitate decision-making in the railroad industry. And don't know if you've noticed, but the workforce looks a little bit different since the early 19th century. Yet somehow we're still operating under the same system. A system that wasn't designed for women, for people of color, or people with disabilities. And when the foundation of a system excludes your lived experience, your strengths are often mischaracterized as flaws. Another recent study found that 76% of high-performing women receive negative feedback on their demeanor, and that's compared with 2% of men. That means it doesn't matter what you accomplish, but rather how you accomplish it. Your style, your demeanor, your disposition. My first boss out of college wrote in my annual review, "Limited future potential because she giggles." One giggle, one meeting, overrode a year of exceptional performance. Far too often, it feels like no matter what you do, it's wrong. And that feeling in the pit of your stomach, it's not your fault. It's because you're, being railroaded by an outdated system. My second boss out of college told me I was unprofessional because I wore flats instead of heels. Then when I went to work in Latin America, the head of human resources told me I shouldn't wear heels, which I think is because I was like 6 inches taller than him, but whatever. One man says heels are unprofessional. The other one says the opposite. This has nothing to do with professionalism. This is about control. And when we twist ourselves into knots, trying to conform, we diminish our skills and capabilities and unintentionally give away our innate power. And that's why I wrote my book, was to help my clients understand how to use their voice, how to take up space, how to throw an occasional elbow, but how to get what they deserve. Because throughout history, the world has tried to silence powerful women. Take journalist Connie Chung. She had to fight her way through the male-dominated newsrooms by being brash and taking the stories no one else wanted. But she ended up becoming the first Asian American news anchor of a major news network. When we give ourselves permission to be too much, the world starts to adapt. Another way to disrupt is to speak the unspeakable, to boldly discuss the taboo topics that have been holding us back. We're taught to downplay our experiences and minimize our challenges. But when we're silent, we're easy to overlook. From menstruation to motherhood, from the wage gap to the mental load, the more we talk about these things, the better we can advocate for ourselves and others. Take finances, for example. When I was growing up, women didn't talk about money, largely because it wasn't an option. Do you realize that Gen X is the first generation of women to have full legal control of their finances? Prior to us, women couldn't get a bank account or a credit card or a home loan without a male cosigner. In fact, the last law was enacted when I was 2 years old, codifying our financial rights. And if it weren't for Ruth Bader Ginsburg raising her voice in courtrooms and in dissent, who knows where we would be? But you don't know what you don't know. For example, I didn't negotiate my first job offer out of college. I didn't know you could. You see, both my parents were teachers in Iowa, and their salary was very transparent. Years of experience, level of education, that's what you got paid. So when I got my job offer from Procter & Gamble, I simply said yes. But here's the thing. Not negotiating your first job offer can cost you $1 million in your lifetime. And statistically, women are far less likely to negotiate than men. Discussing salaries is one of the ultimate taboos. And we don't talk about compensation because companies don't want us to. Some even saying it's illegal. It's not. Under the National Labor Relations Act, most employees have the right to discuss wages with their coworkers. And they've had that right since 1935. That's almost 100 years. But you probably didn't know that, because lack of transparency benefits companies, and silence protects the status quo. That's why outspoken and obstreperous women like Dolores Huerta raised her voice in her megaphone and yelled into it to make the world listen, resulting in dramatically improved wages and conditions for thousands upon thousands of California farm workers. And what about the mental load? We don't talk about that either. You know, the behind-the-scenes stuff that needs to happen for work and life to flow. We're talking the planning of the meetings, remembering the birthdays, knowing who's allergic to what. That's necessary work, and it almost always falls on the shoulders of women. In an average full-time job, you will work 2,000 hours in a year. And the mental load for women is another 520 hours on top of that. Now, part of the challenge is most women don't even recognize all the extra work they're doing. And to be fair, if the women don't notice it, the men sure as hell won't. And so because of that, that's why we have to talk about it, why we have to shift the paradigm and change the power. Outspoken women change things. Now, you might be like many of us who adopted a persona at work to get by. And that persona, quite possibly, is the opposite of obstreperous. Quiet, easygoing, go with the flow. But that might be the very thing holding you back. To thrive and not just survive, I need you to give yourself permission to reshape who you are and ensure that it's working in service of your goals. When I was in corporate, I was a hyperachiever. If something needed to be done, give it to me. I'd do all the tasks, lead all the projects, win all the prizes. And sometimes that worked for me. And other times it was self-sabotaging. Because I would be so focused on the next thing, I would forget to feed and water what I already had. And at work, on top of my regular job, I would take on task after task, project after. That wasn't the work I needed to do to advance. Because promotions are not based on your ability to complete tasks. Promotions are based on the perception of your leadership potential. To unleash your full potential and find your innate power, I want you to take a beat and ask yourself, is what you're doing truly serving you? Are you being who you want to be or who you feel you have to be? Is the work you're adding on truly going to help you get ahead? And then give yourself permission to reset your boundaries. And then stop any of the work that's self-sabotaging and ensure that the perception of your skills and capabilities matches the reality. Scientist Marie Curie was denied formal education, so she attended a secret university and became the first woman to win a Nobel Prize, and is the only human to win one in 2 categories. Or take tennis star Billie Jean King. Tired of the patriarchal establishment in tennis, she left to form her own tour, demanding equal pay. She helped legitimize women's sports. Those are two of just many examples of successful and influential women who didn't change who they were. They changed how success looked. We've been conditioned to play nice, to wait, to hope someone taps us on the shoulder. But you don't need permission to speak, to lead, or succeed. If I had a magic wand, I would wave it and wish for every woman to bring her outspoken, messy, amazing self to everything that she did. That she would give herself to be bold, to disrupt, to be difficult to control. I want women to break every unwritten rule keeping them quiet. I want to change the workplace and challenge the status quo. I want us to advocate for ourselves in a way that works for us. I want to have men held to the same standard and share the mental load. I want to ask for what we need and demand what we deserve. I want tampons in all the work bathrooms, and I want equity in the boardroom. Because the world doesn't change when we behave. It changes when we refuse to stand back and we refuse to be silent. And that framework of possibility we create is for us and everyone else. And the world needs it from us. When I was growing up, teachers told me I was too much. But so was Cleopatra, and she outmaneuvered Rome's most powerful generals. So is Frida Kahlo, who dared to make women's pain visible in art. They were outspoken, yes, and innately powerful, but so are you. So, go ahead. Be bold. Be disruptive. Be unignorable. Be too much. Be obstreperous. And then watch what happens when you are. Thank you.